if you work in different countries, you have to be aware of different cultures and way of doing things, and that's challenging, which is a bad thing because there's a huge gap in the salary, the incomes between women and men. And if people would talk, women would know better how much their colleagues make, and they could fight for their rights. So this is.
Why is the speaking part the most challenging? Because I think that many people who would be watching probably feel the same thing.
Listening to programs, watching, being exposed to the language. So I think it's quite obvious, but being exposed to the language, and now I'm able to read books in Spanish, and that really helps as well.
What can you identify that fear?
That's very interesting.
Yeah. Whew,
oh my God.
Imagine that. Hey there, English speakers. Welcome to the channel and welcome to another edition of this new series that I'm doing on the channel called Let's Talk Languages. And the purpose of this is just to show you that language learning, and in particular English learning, is more than just a grammar rule and exam prep, but it's actual communication that we use in our everyday life. And what I like to do, I like to interview different polyglots. And if you don't know what a polyglot is, then you probably do know what a polyglot is. But just in case you don't, it's someone who speaks multiple languages, right? So to just give you some encouragement and to let you know that it is possible. But today I have a very special guest. Her name is Claudine Morier, and I guess in French, maybe it would be Morier. I don't know. We'll ask her, but she's an entrepreneur. We're going to ask her about that and a whole bunch more about her language learning journey. She speaks 4 languages, including French, German, English, and Spanish, which the Spanish is really interesting because I actually got to experience and watch her journey from almost no Spanish to, speaking Spanish really, really well. And we'll talk to her about that. And by the way, this interview will have a little different feel because I actually know Claudine personally. We're friends. So this isn't the first time talking to her, but it'll be the first time talking about languages. So, hey, Claudine.
Hey, Jesse, how are you?
Nice. I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing good, thanks.
Good. So, did I miss anything in your introduction? Tell me about your languages. How many languages do you speak?
Wait. First, I'm going to tell you my name in French because that's the way it should be said. Claudine Morier. But it was not bad the way you said it. So, Claudine and Morier, yeah. And because I live in Spain, so people used to call me here Claudine. So that's why you said that. That would be Claudine.
True. Your name would be like how we would pronounce it. And if I were to read your name in English, I would say Claudine.
Yeah, exactly.
But I always say it Claudine because that's just what I hear because the Spanish pronunciation.
Exactly, yeah.
That's true. Okay.
That's the fun thing with living in another country, right?
Yeah. It is like a new identity, isn't it?
Mm-hmm, exactly. Yeah. So maybe for the people watching, I am Swiss. I come from the French part of Switzerland, and I've been living in Sevilla since a year and a half now.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm a new entrepreneur. I used to be an employee for all my life, so that's been a very interesting passion. Really interesting journey.
Okay, well, let's actually get into that first about being an entrepreneur and really going into business in a foreign language, because your business is primarily actually you have business in French and English, correct?
Exactly, yeah. I'm not trying to do business in Spain because I felt like my level of Spanish was not good enough at the moment. And so thanks to the technology, it's possible to work everywhere. So I'm really trying to targeting the countries I know best, which are in the north of Europe. So mainly Switzerland, Belgium, Luxembourg, Germany. And so that would be in French and German. And I've also tried to work in English in a more global level, but it's been challenging. So I'm trying now to focus more on the French speaking part, because
Okay.
we'll talk about the challenges of working in another language. It's so
Absolutely.
difficult.
Yeah. What is, I
Yeah.
mean, it seems to me, and it may to a lot of viewers, that it would just complicate things to target people in multiple languages. Does it complicate things, or once you have a system in place, it you just kind of like copy paste in different languages, like your system?
I would say the heart of the work is the same. So it's just a question of being convincing enough in another language. But the work is the same. So this is not the challenge in itself. The challenge is that you have to know the different systems in which you try to get work. So you need to know the national system, way of working, way of addressing people. Um, if you work in different countries, you have to be aware of different cultures and way of doing things, and that's challenging.
That's actually a very good point, because different languages, I mean, language is a window into the culture, correct?
Mhm. Exactly.
So that's interesting. What is maybe some specific challenges? I'm asking you to think off the top of your head right now, and examples are always challenging to think of off the top of your head. But what are some specific challenges that are related to culture and finding clients or talking to clients?
Mhm. What comes into my mind right now is, well, typically a difference between Switzerland and the States, right? In Switzerland, we are very modest. We don't like people to brag. Even if someone is very successful, he shouldn't say it too loud. And I felt like in the States, it's just the opposite. You should be really self-conscious, very self-confident, and show it and pretend you can do everything. So I've had a few job interviews, and that went wrong because I was not able to pretend. For me, it's like a bit of you should be. I don't have the word right now, but you should pretend, even if you're not sure exactly you can do the job. Just say, "Of course, I can do it."
And then
And so
figure it
this
out later.
exactly, and this is something I'm really struggling with because I'm too honest, I think, and sometimes I should just say, yeah, of course I can do that, and but that's also a question of being able to talk without having that much of a content behind.
Hmm.
Some people can really talk and talk and talk even if they don't have anything to say. I'm quite the opposite. I'm gonna talk when I have something to say.
Yeah,
So
that is
this is,
cultural, isn't it? And that's
yeah.
actually a strength. That can be a strength too, for sure. Because some people, like you said, talk and talk and talk when they don't have anything to say. And then, like, a lot of people stop listening.
Exactly,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I know we've experienced these differences. Another difference in Switzerland is you don't really talk about money and what you make, or even your
Exactly.
job. Do you? Like in the United States, like a typical first question, and for anyone listening curious about how to make small talk, a typical first question is like, "What do you do?"
Yeah.
You
No, in
know.
Switzerland, it's the same. It's very often the first question that comes. And this, because we define ourselves very much through our profession, our work.
Oh, do you?
So yeah. But that's a big problem for people who don't have a job or who are not there where they wanted to be. So I'm really questioning that now, but that I live in another country. Here in Sevilla, people don't ask you that. It's amazing how you can know someone, see them like a few times, and you still don't know what they do for a living because they don't define themselves with work. Also, because of the economic situation, a lot of people haven't been able to do what they wanted to do, so they just work for a living. And so in Switzerland, we do talk about work, but we don't talk about money. We don't ask people how much they make, which is a bad thing because there's a huge gap in the salary, the incomes between women and men. And if people would talk, women would know better how much their colleagues make and they could fight for their rights. So this is kind of a bad thing.
That's true. Transparency, I think, is always a good thing. Careful with the word always, but transparency. is almost always a good thing, just for that reason, to know where you're at and to leverage yourself, right? Yeah, here in
Exactly.
Spain, they don't like, work is something you do, and life
Yeah,
is different, right?
exactly. Yeah.
For better or worse, there are pros and
Mhm.
cons to that.
Yeah, of course.
But so let's talk languages. Tell me about, French, obviously your native language,
Yeah.
English, obviously fluent, German, and now Spanish. We've talked about Spanish. German and English, what did you learn first? Or did you learn them together?
So I learned both in Switzerland in public school, which was mandatory. I started German first for 4 or 5 years, and only 2 years of English, if I remember correctly. Um, yeah, but the way we learn a language in school is not very efficient. So I was not able to speak those two languages when I finished obligatory school. And the
Was that
way for
after
me,
high school, like at 18, after you finished all of your school, you still
no, no,
couldn't?
no, 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 just the obligatory school, so until 15. And then when I went to high school, I continued with German and English, and I did an exchange for 2 months in Germany, and that's the moment that I really had this click. Before that, I was maybe the worst student in the class, and after the 2 months, well, I came back and I was able to speak. I finally understood that language. Before I had some prejudice as well about the language, and I realized
German
when
or English?
yeah, no, German, no, English was always easier because listening to the music, the culture was more accessible than the German one. But what made the difference for me was to get to know people speaking German, to see that there were some nice people speaking that language, and that was my entry door actually to this language. And I really had a click, when suddenly I was able to understand and to speak. And I actually got a prize at the end of high school for the person who had the highest learning curve. So that was interesting.
Awesome.
Very rewarding.
The
Yeah.
most improved.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Awesome. So that's interesting. You said something very cool there. It clicked. Is that what you
Yeah.
found mostly happened with English too, and German and with Spanish? There's a point where something clicks and connects, and then, not saying it's smooth sailing after that, but something clicks and things start to make a lot more sense. Is
So I had that with German for sure. With English, I feel like it was easier for me from the start. And I also spent 6 months in New Zealand after high school. So, I always kind of, it was easier for me with English. So I don't remember having that click. And with Spanish, I'm not sure. That's a good question. Well, actually, yes, because I started learning Spanish in 2015 in Switzerland. Just 2 hours a week. It didn't get any result really. I still wasn't able to speak, to understand. I went to Chile, for a month. After that, wasn't able to speak. And it's only when I came to Sevilla in 2019 for 2 weeks intensive class that I had that click again. Exactly. Yeah, now I remember that finally I was able to speak. That's always that speaking part that is the most challenging for me.
Was that the most? Why?
Um,
Why is the speaking part the most challenging? Because I think that many people who would be watching probably feel the same thing. So why was
mhm.
the speaking most challenging, and how did you overcome it, if you if you have?
Well, I think the speaking part is so challenging because at the beginning you have so many things in your head. You have the conjugation. Like for me, the verbs in Spanish have been really difficult, and it's just it's like if your mind is processing too slow to be trying to put all the pieces together. and until it comes out finally, and it's too late if you're in a conversation. So this is really difficult.
Like
So
to keep up with the conversation, you mean, or to have the things come from your mind to your mouth in the right way? What do you mean, like in following the flow of a conversation?
so well, that would be the next level. Even before that, just to have the right thing coming through, yeah, from the mind to the mouth. And the fear of doing it wrong. I think some people are more sensitive to that than others. Um, yeah, I think that click helps overcome that fear of making mistakes. At some point, you're confident enough to try. Before that, you're so sure you're you're a loser. You don't even try,
Yeah.
or loser, or you don't have it,
No, yeah, no, that's totally fair, because I see that a lot in language learners. I see that, people, they might score high on an exam, or they might, know an answer, but they're so shy and so timid to actually speak because of that fear of making a mistake, fear of looking silly. What can you identify what exactly your fear was? Was it making a mistake? Was it that you thought people would laugh at you? Was it just internal? What can you identify that fear?
That's very introspective. I don't know.
We're going deep here. We're going deep, Claudine.
You didn't say it would be like a therapy thing.
Tell me about your deepest fears. And there's going to be tens of people watching.
Nice. No, I'm not so sure actually. I think it's just yeah, maybe the fear of looking stupid. That's as basic as that.
Yeah. Because I just asked, by the way, because I kind of don't really have that. You've been in conversations with me in Spanish. It's like one big mistake, and I don't really worry about it. So it's which, I mean, that's actually to my detriment. I probably should worry about it a little more, but but so I was just wondering, because some viewers might identify with that, and that's why we went down that rabbit hole. So what about thinking in another language? With being proficient in so many languages, I mean, for one, there's confusing languages, like mixing them up with the words that come out. But what do you generally think in? Do you think in the language that you're speaking, or do you translate all the time? How do you feel about that?
I believe I think in the language I'm using. So I catch myself thinking in German after a video call in German, After that, I'm in my bathroom, and I'm talking to myself in German. And then, same thing happens to me when I've been speaking French or English or Spanish. So really, it's all the question of the last language I've been exposed to.
Okay.
I think, yeah.
And then that switches if you were to go into a German speaking environment, I'm sure you'd switch over to German. Is that?
Yeah, actually, it's what's happening, and that's so weird, because sometimes I try to say something in German to someone, I could be talking to you, and you would ask me something. How do you say that in German? And it doesn't come to my mind. But an hour later, I'm gonna have a call with a German colleague, and it's gonna come automatically. So this is really, I'm amazed by that process. I don't master it; it just comes.
Nice. Do you think that's natural, or is there a way that you've trained yourself to do that? Or does it just kind of happen naturally and you observe it happening?
I think it happens naturally after having reached a certain level. I would say when you start with the language, it's not that fluent and it doesn't flow like that. It's once you've reached maybe B2, C1 level, I would say somehow, that it comes that naturally. I don't know if that's something you've been observing as well.
In myself,
yeah. Or with your students, I don't know.
Well, something I tell my students is, because it's a common thing that people want, I actually have a video about thinking in English. I'll put that. I'm not going to put that up in the card, but I really do. And one thing I tell them is you're already probably doing it and you don't realize it. And that's a common request. They say, I want to be able to think directly in English. And I'm like, you probably are a lot more than you think you are, because it would just take too long and too much brain power to constantly be translating in your head. For one, we probably think in images a lot. And then, and you're not really translating, I think, usually. Because I don't have that high of a level, and I kind of think a lot of the time directly, especially with shorter sentences. Longer stories is a little, more challenging. So what do you struggle with learning languages then? What's your biggest struggle when you're learning a new language and when you're already like kind of proficient?
Well, my way of learning is really in a classroom or in an interaction with people. So I'm not the typical person who can study alone at home, doing my own program and setting my own goals, and it's not for me. So the way I've been able to learn languages was really through immersion, through or shorter time period or longer. Living a few months to up to a year to another country, and going to intensive class. That's been the successful way for me. And after, then once I am in a class, I can do the homework and I am motivated to do that. But just doing that for myself, it doesn't work. Look, I have this beautiful new book. I just haven't opened it. I have it since a year and I'm not doing it. I just, it's not for me. So I really need that interaction. And also what I love is to really work on what I need in that moment. I don't want to learn something that I won't never use, and that's what I had that problem with learning Spanish last year, because it went so fast, in the school I went to. Suddenly we learned like 3-4 different past tense, and I was not mastering them. I was still, struggling, and bam, they introduced the subjunctive. I think
Subjunctive.
so, yeah. Subjunctive, and it's just, they lost me. And after that, so I went out of the class and I said, okay, it's not the pace for me, and I switched to a private class, and that was a good idea, I think, because then I was able to really go on my own rhythm.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point, is to know how you learn the best, right? Some people learn the best with their own schedule. They pick out their schedule. They just need like some guidance. And some people do need that interaction. Some people wouldn't, like me, I wouldn't be tempted at all to join a class, but like a one-on-one kind of lesson, that would be best for me. But the biggest thing is to find what works for you. And if you try something for like weeks, don't try it for one day, but like a couple weeks, and it doesn't work, or you're fighting going, or you're fighting doing it, or you're fighting, like, find something else, find another way. And that's a really good point.
Exactly. Okay, good. So with Spanish learning, I actually went only a month in a class, last year, and then there was the lockdown, so so I couldn't continue with the class. And what really helped me was talking every day to Spanish native people, listening to programs, watching, being exposed to the language. So I think it's quite obvious, but being exposed to the language, and now I'm able to read books in Spanish, and that really helps as well. To fill in the gaps. Because I've been struggling with the verbs, but I'm not finding the motivation to study it. So that's a good way to actually integrate conjugation and expressions. What am I reading? This book.
I mean, in Spanish, right?
Yeah. Almudena Grandes.
Is that a novel?
So it is a novel, and it follows different characters. I like because it is a contemporaneous. So it's a very actual modern language. It's not old literature. So I learned a lot of expressions and even bad words, and so I feel like it really helps me for my daily life. That's what I like.
Nice. That's really good advice. And yeah, I always pass by the reading, but I should probably read a little more in Spanish
It really helps.
because of the
Yeah.
verb conjugation.
Mm.
Um, and you said something else in that I wanted to explore further. What was your first piece of advice right there? All the
I
internet
said
connection talk through me.
I said being exposed to the language, maybe not just
Exposure to the
studying.
language, yes,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it blows my mind when I have like even B2 and C1 students who really want, not even students, people I meet in the street, and they're like, "Oh, I'd love to speak English." And I'm like, "Well, do you watch things in English?" "Oh, no, I'd love to, but I'm too tired when I get home." And it's like, well, then good luck with that, because if you don't
Exactly.
have any exposure, there's no way you're gonna progress.
Yes, watching stuff with the subtitles, that helps a lot as well at first.
Yeah, and I always recommend to watch not with the English subtitles. What do
Okay.
you recommend? Like I
So I
recommend in the Spanish subtitles. I mean, whatever your target language is.
ah
English with,
exactly. So
yeah, sorry,
exactly. So you watch a series in Spanish and you put the Spanish subtitles.
Spanish subtitles.
That's yeah, and English movie, English subtitles. That would be
Yeah,
my piece of advice.
great. Yeah, me too. Because if you're reading, you're really not listening. We can only do one, thing at a time, really,
Mm-hmm.
and that won't help. There are a few ways and a few techniques. I'm actually going to do a video on this, that I would recommend using your native language subtitles. And you tell me if you think this would be correct too, based on your experience. But if you want the general meaning of something, let's say you want to immerse yourself into a Friends episode, watch it with your subtitles to get the idea, to know the context, to know the jokes in your language. And then the next time, watch it with just English subtitles, right? If that's your target language. And then the next time, maybe with no subtitles. Kind of like work your way, because you know the context. Next, you're listening for the language.
That's a good idea, actually. Yeah, and also because the episode is short, so it wouldn't be that much of a work. It seems to be like a good idea.
Yeah, cool. So let's wrap up. But we talked about your entrepreneur business and what you do. Well, we talked about that you have one. We didn't talk about what you do. So what is it that you do exactly?
Sure. So I'm a consultant.
Time out. This is your time to brag on yourself. You have to tap into your American self and really brag about
my
yourself.
God. Where is it? I don't know if I can find it. Okay, let's try. So I'm a consultant. I work for businesses and public administration who wants to measure and improve their impact, their social, environmental, economical impact. And I'm starting a business with a colleague in Switzerland, and we're going to focus mainly on the small cities and villages, who wants to actually make their neighborhood more lively, who wants to
your neighborhood.
The neighborhood, on a small scale. That's what we want to focus on.
Sorry.
Kind
of like
the
city planning, but like on a smaller scale in a rural area?
Exactly, but planning is more about infrastructures, buildings and parks, and we want to help cities improve the well-being of inhabitants, of users, of businesses, of tourists, help different areas to also transition from the mass tourism to a more sustainable tourism. So it's really through participative methods, asking the people what they need, what they want, and then helping the authorities implement that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That sounds awesome.
I'm very excited about that.
Cool. I'm excited for you.
Thanks.
Very nice. Okay. Anything else before we close?
No,
language related, life related, philosophy.
Well, I think speaking different languages is awesome. It really opens your doors, and it's really, there are ups and downs. Sometimes it's so frustrating. You don't know why. One day you feel like the king of the world. You can really speak so well, and the next day you're not able to align 2 or 3 words, in a sentence. So I think that's okay. That's normal, and I would say to your students, listener, accept that you can't be at the top every day, but don't abandon. It's really cool to speak different languages.
Powerful advice to close. We're going to close there. Thank you, Claudine. Thank you for joining us. And any listeners that lasted and are here listening until now, hit the subscribe button, and we love you. Okay.
Thanks, Jesse.
Thanks. Bye.